The night shift at Stellar Medical Station 47 had settled into its usual rhythm of routine diagnostics and minor emergency treatments when the proximity alarm screamed to life. Dr. Sarah Chen looked up from her patient charts to see a burning ship careening toward the emergency bay, trailing plasma and debris in its wake. "Incoming vessel, you are not cleared for approach," the station's AI announced with remarkable calm. "Please adjust your trajectory or—" The rest of the warning dissolved into static as the ship smashed through the emergency bay shields, scattering medical equipment and sending staff diving for cover. Sarah sprinted toward the wreckage, her med scanner already whirring to life. The ship's hull had partially melted, its surface riddled with weapon impacts that spoke of a brutal pursuit. As she approached, the cockpit burst open with a hydraulic shriek, expelling a massive figure that crashed to the deck in a spray of iridescent blood. The figure's armor, though damaged, was unmistakable. Obsidian plates inlaid with pulsing neural interfaces, bearing the distinctive crimson markings of the Khazari warrior elite. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as recognition hit her. This wasn't just any warrior. This was Arkstal, the legendary fighter whose name was whispered in fear across 3 galactic arms. The station's security protocols activated instantly. Blast doors slammed shut as warning klaxons filled the air. "Attention all personnel." The AI's voice had lost its composure now. "Omega-level threat detected. Please proceed to secure zones immediately." Around her, the alien medical staff were already retreating. Dr. Kara, her Meridian colleague, grabbed her arm. "Sarah, we must go. That's the butcher of Centauri Prime. They've killed millions." But Sarah was already reading the med scanner's results. Multiple organ failures, severe neural hemorrhaging, critical damage to all 3 cardiovascular systems. The warrior's legendary regenerative capabilities were failing, overwhelmed by what appeared to be a cascade failure in their neural enhancement network. "They're dying," Sarah said, shrugging off Sakara's grip. The scanner's projection gave Arkstal less than 20 minutes to live without intervention. She could see the warrior's augmented musculature spasming beneath their armor, neural implants flickering erratically. "Good." Sakara's secondary eyes blinked rapidly in distress. "The galaxy will be safer. The protocols are clear. We do not treat Class Omega threats." Sarah was already pulling emergency supplies from the nearest med station. "The protocols also say we treat anyone who needs help. That's what we do. That's what I do." The station's security forces were converging on the bay, weapons drawn. Sarah positioned herself between them and her patient, armed with nothing but a medical kit and stubborn determination. "This is a medical bay," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent years commanding emergency rooms. "And this is my patient, Dr. Chen." The security chief's voice crackled through his helmet. "Step away. That thing is responsible for the deaths of countless innocents. Right now, they're responsible for raising my blood pressure," Sarah retorted, already preparing a neural stabilizer. "Either help me move them to Operating Theater 3 or get out of my way." A groan from behind her made everyone flinch. Arkstal's eyes opened, all 4 of them, glowing with cybernetic enhancement. The warrior's translator crackled to life, spitting out broken phrases in a dozen languages before settling on Galactic Standard. "Finish it." Arkstal's voice was surprisingly soft for such a massive being. "End the threat." Sarah knelt beside the warrior, her scanner detecting new complications with each passing second. "The only threat to you right now is this neural cascade. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, and I'm going to save your life. Try to fight me on this, and I'll sedate you faster than you can blink all 4 of those eyes." For a moment, the legendary warrior stared at her in what might have been confusion or disbelief. Then, remarkably, they laughed, a sound that turned into a wet cough as more iridescent blood spattered the deck. "Fascinating," Arkstal managed before losing consciousness. "A human who fights with mercy." Operating Theater 3 hummed with discordant energy as Sarah studied the neural scan, results floating before her. The warrior's implants pulsed with enough raw power to fry every piece of medical equipment in the room. And that was with them operating at barely 30% capacity. Dr. Chen, the council demands an immediate report. Station Director Ven's hologram flickered in the corner of the theater, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated extreme agitation. You've brought an unprecedented risk onto this station. Sarah adjusted another scanner, trying to map the intricate web of cybernetics threaded through Arcstol's nervous system. Tell them I'm busy keeping my patient alive. These implants are like nothing I've ever seen. They're military grade, but there's something wrong with the integration. It's as if. She paused, noticing a pattern in the energy signatures. They're not failing. They're being sabotaged. All the more reason to terminate treatment, Ven insisted. The council has voted. You have 1 hour to end this. A hologram vanished before Sarah could argue. She turned back to her patient, watching as another seizure rippled through Arcstol's massive frame. The warrior's armor had been partially removed, revealing a maze of surgical scars and cybernetic access ports. Each spasm threatened to tear the reinforced medical restraints. What did they do to you? Sarah muttered, noting how the neural implants seemed to be fighting against their host's own biology. She'd treated enhanced soldiers before, but this was different. The Kizari military hadn't just upgraded their warrior. They'd tried to remake them from the inside out. A warning klaxon pulled her attention to the main monitor. The implants were cycling up again, their energy signature building toward another cascade. Standard treatments had failed, and she was running out of options. Sarah made a decision. Computer, seal Operating Theater 3. Authorization Chen Alpha 7. The doors locked with a heavy thud as she began disconnecting the standard medical equipment. She had another idea, one that would probably get her medical license revoked in at least 3 star systems. Working quickly, she converted the maintenance bay adjacent to the theater into a makeshift operating room. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory as she laid out the ancient acupuncture needles she always carried. Sometimes the oldest methods understand the body better than the newest machines. The next seizure hit harder than the others. Arcstol's eyes snapped open, cybernetic implants flaring with deadly energy. Kill. Me? They gasped, their translator glitching between languages. Not happening. Sarah replied, preparing a neural blocker. Though you might want to kill me when you wake up and see what I'm about to try. She began inserting the needles, using them to map the warrior's natural neural pathways. The readouts were fascinating. Beneath the military modifications, Arcstol's nervous system was attempting to heal itself, but the implants were actively fighting this natural process. They built it all wrong, Sarah realized, watching the energy patterns shift. They tried to override your biology instead of working with it. No wonder you're... The theater's lights flickered as another power surge ripped through the implants. Warning messages flooded her screens. Containment fields were failing, and the theater's shielding was beginning to crack. Sarah had minutes, maybe less, before the building energy either killed her patient or breached the theater's walls. Standard procedure would be to shut down the implants entirely, effectively lobotomizing the galaxy's deadliest warrior. Instead, she reached for her surgical kit. Computer, log final treatment note, she commanded, preparing for a procedure that existed only in her mind. Dr. Sarah Chen, attempting experimental neural pathway restoration using modified traditional techniques combined with modern stabilization. If this kills us both, I'd like the record to show this was a really cool idea in theory. As she positioned the first set of needles around a primary neural cluster, Arcstol's hand suddenly gripped her wrist. Their 4 eyes focused on her with terrifying clarity. Why? They asked simply. Sarah met their gaze steadily. Because right now, you're not a warrior or a weapon. You're my patient. And I'm a very, very stubborn doctor. Sweat beaded on Sarah's forehead as she manipulated the ancient needles, each one positioned to redirect the chaotic energy surging through Arcstol's neural pathways. The warrior's natural healing abilities were extraordinary. She could actually see new tissue forming around the implants, only to be immediately attacked by the military-grade cybernetics. "Your own people really didn't trust you," she muttered, watching the pattern repeat. "These implants aren't just enhancements. They're a control system." A warning flashed across her neural interface. Encrypted transmissions detected at the edge of the station's sensor range. Sarah's hands remained steady, but her jaw tightened. Someone was coming to finish what the sabotaged implants had started. Arcstol stirred, fighting through the sedation. "They're coming." "Yeah, I figured that out." Sarah adjusted another needle, watching as the energy flow stabilized momentarily. "Want to tell me why the Khazari military is trying to kill their most valuable warrior?" The warrior's laugh was more of a pained growl. "Discovered truth. Enhancement program, built on lies. Not making us stronger. Making us slaves." A sudden surge of energy nearly knocked Sarah off her feet. The needles glowed white-hot but held their position, channeling the destructive force away from vital systems. Her grandfather would have been proud and horrified to see his techniques used this way. "Neural mapping complete," the computer announced. "Analysis indicates presence of secondary programming within implant network. Purpose: behavioral modification and memory suppression." Sarah's blood ran cold. She wasn't just treating injuries. She was dismantling a sophisticated control system disguised as military enhancement. No wonder they wanted Arcstol dead. A warrior of their caliber, free from control. The station's security alert changed pitch. Multiple vessels approaching. Energy signatures match Khazari military craft. "How long?" Sarah demanded, already reaching for her surgical tools. 17 minutes until intercept." Arcstol's massive frame tensed. "Leave. Save yourself." "Not a chance." Sarah began the delicate process of redirecting neural pathways around the compromised implants. "I've spent the last 3 hours keeping you alive. I'm not stopping now." The warrior's 4 eyes studied her with an intensity that had probably terrified countless enemies. "Why do humans do this? Act against logic." "You mean, why do we help people who might kill us?" Sarah smiled grimly as she worked. "Because that's how we survived as a species, by helping each other when it made no sense, by being stubborn when we should have given up." She paused to wipe sweat from her eyes. "And sometimes by being clever enough to turn our enemies into allies." A proximity alarm screamed. One of the approaching vessels had accelerated, cutting the arrival time in half. Sarah's fingers flew faster, guiding the needles through a complex pattern that her grandfather had once used to treat nerve damage. She'd modified it significantly, using the ancient techniques to create new pathways for the implant's energy. "There," she breathed, watching as the energy flow stabilized into a sustainable pattern. "Your implants are still active, but they're working with your biology now, not against it. The control protocols are isolated. You're free to." The station shuddered as something impacted the outer shields. Sarah stumbled, nearly disrupting the delicate needle arrangement. Arcstol's hand shot out with impossible speed, steadying her. 8 minutes until shield failure, the computer reported calmly. Arcstol sat up, needles still protruding from precise points across their massive frame. Their eyes glowed with a different kind of intensity now, not the mechanical glare of military cybernetics, but something more alive. "You have given me more than healing," they said, their translator capturing new depths in their voice. "You have given me choice." They stood, towering over Sarah. "Now I choose to ensure you survive what comes next." The station rocked with another impact as Sarah stared up at her patient. "I'm not done treating you." For the first time, Arcstol's expression might have been a smile. "No, but now it is my turn to protect the healer." The medical bay's emergency lights cast everything in a pulsing red glow as Sarah worked to remove the last of the control needles. Each extraction had to be precise, One wrong move could destabilize the new neural pathways she created, but precision was difficult when the station kept shaking from repeated impacts. Outer shields at 40%, the computer announced. Multiple breaches detected in sectors 7 through 9. Orcs still stood at the theater's entrance, their massive frame blocking the doorway. The warrior moved differently now, more fluid, less mechanical. They're sending boarding parties, standard Khazari extinction protocol. They'll purge every living thing on this station to reach us. Not if I finished stabilizing these pathways first. Sarah's hands remained steady as she worked, even as another impact rattled the deck plates. Once your neural network is fully integrated, you'll have better control than they ever intended. How does it feel now? Strange. Arxtal admitted, flexing their enhanced muscles. I remember everything. Things they made me forget. World's Eye. They stopped, 4 eyes narrowing. World's Eye destroyed because they commanded it. A sudden wave of neural feedback surged through the remaining needles, nearly burning Sarah's fingers. Arxtal's combat implants flared to life, responding to the warrior's rising emotional state. The new pathways Sarah had created began to strain under the pressure of suppressed memories. Stay with me, Sarah urged, adjusting the final needle to compensate. Those memories are part of you now, but they don't control you. The implants aren't fighting your emotions anymore. They're adapting to them. The station's AI cut in. Warning. Multiple hostile entities detected in medical sector. Security barriers failing. Arxtal moved toward the door, but Sarah's voice stopped them. Don't you dare leave this room. I need 3 more minutes to complete this procedure, or everything we've done could collapse. They'll be here in 2 minutes. Then I'll work faster. Sarah's fingers blurred as she began the final phase of the treatment. Tell me about the conspiracy you discovered. Keep talking. It'll help stabilize the neural integration. Arxtal's voice rumbled with barely contained rage. The enhancement program. It was never meant to make us stronger. They wanted soldiers who couldn't question orders, couldn't feel remorse, couldn't choose mercy. They turned to look at Sarah. Like what you showed me. The sound of plasma fire echoed through the corridors outside. Sarah extracted another needle, watching as the neural pathway it had created held stable. Mercy isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the hardest kind of strength. Yes. Arxtal's translator caught something like wonder in their tone. I understand that now. I feel. They stopped, head tilting. They're here. The theater's reinforced door began to glow as cutting tools attacked it from the other side. Sarah pulled out the second-to-last needle, her heart pounding but her hand still steady. One more. Just one more. Sarah. It was the first time Arxtal had used her name. If I don't survive what comes next, know that you have done more than heal a warrior. You have awakened a conscience. The door's edges began to melt. Sarah removed the final needle, checking the neural readouts. Perfect integration. Your implants are now working in harmony with your natural systems. You're stronger than they ever intended, because now you're whole. Arxtal straightened to their full height as the door began to give way. Then I will show them true strength, the strength of choice, of mercy. They looked down at Sarah, and of protecting those who heal instead of harm. The door exploded inward in a shower of molten metal. Sarah raised her arm to shield her eyes, but Arxtal was already moving. Their enhanced speed was incredible, no longer the rigid programmed movements of before, but something fluid and natural. The first assassin through the door never even saw what hit them. Sarah grabbed her medical kit. Somehow, she knew she'd need it before this night was over, both for her enemies and her patient, because that's what healers did, even when history itself hung in the balance. The operating theater had become a battlefield. Sarah crouched behind an overturned medical console, watching in awe as Arxtal moved through the space with impossible grace. The warrior's enhanced reflexes, now working in perfect harmony with their natural abilities, made them appear almost liquid in the strobing emergency lights. 3 assassins lay unconscious, not dead, near the doorway. Axtal had chosen to incapacitate rather than kill. The fourth attacker hung back, analyzing the situation with glowing cybernetic eyes. The target has been compromised, the assassin announced in clipped Hizari battle speak. Neural patterns show unauthorized modifications, escalating to total termination protocols. Sarah's medical scanner blared a warning. The assassin's implants were powering up, building to levels that would kill their host within minutes. They're using suicide protocols, she shouted. Their implants are going critical. Axtal spun to face her, like mine were meant to. Exactly like that, but faster, more violent. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. I can help them, but I need. The assassin exploded into motion, their implants turning their body into a living weapon. The air crackled with neural energy as they slammed into Axtal with enough force to crack the reinforced floor plates. But where the old Axtal would have responded with equal brutality, this version adapted, redirected, used their opponent's momentum against them. Sarah didn't waste the opportunity. She scrambled to her medical kit, pulling out the emergency acupuncture set she'd replicated after treating Axtal. Hold them still. Their implants are going to detonate. Attempting compliance, Axtal grunted, wrestling with the berserk assassin. They are not being cooperative. The assassin's skin had begun to glow from within as their implants approached critical mass. Sarah could see their neural pathways burning up through her scanner. Get them on the ground. Now. Axtal swept the assassin's legs, using their own enhanced strength against them. They hit the deck hard enough to dent it, but the assassin kept fighting, driven by programming that would sacrifice them to complete their mission. Sarah dove in with the needles, her hands moving with practiced precision. I'm sorry, this is going to hurt, she told the struggling assassin. But I'm not letting anyone else die from these implants. The assassin's translator spat static as they thrashed. Function is death. Not anymore. Sarah placed the final needle, creating an emergency neural pathway to bleed off the building energy. Function is living. Function is choice. The assassin's implants flared one final time, then stabilized. Their enhanced muscles went slack as the suicide protocols disengage. 4 cybernetic eyes stared up at Sarah in confusion. What have you done to me? Saved your life, Sarah replied, checking their vital signs. And maybe gave you back your free will, if you wanted. More weapons fire echoed from the corridors outside. Axtal moved to the doorway, their enhanced senses scanning for threats. 3 more teams converging on our position, all likely equipped with similar protocols. Sarah began preparing more needles. Then we better get ready. I'm not losing a single patient tonight. The assassin slowly sat up, staring at their hands as if seeing them for the first time. We were supposed to be the perfect weapons, they said softly. But you turned us back into people. People make better warriors than weapons, Axtal replied, helping them stand. The human showed me that. Now you must choose. Will you help us show the others? The assassin's implants pulsed once, then settled into the same harmonious pattern that Sarah had created in Axtal. Yes, they said, their voice stronger. Yes, I will. Sarah checked her supplies and took a deep breath. Good, because I'm going to need help to treat that many patients at once. She looked up at her 2 former enemies, now transformed into something neither the Khazari military nor she had expected. Allies in healing. The station shuddered as more assault ships docked. Sarah squared her shoulders. Let's go show them what happens when you combine a human healer with warriors who choose mercy. Corridor 7 had become a makeshift treatment center. Sarah moved between prone warriors, her hands steady despite her exhaustion. 5 former assassins lay unconscious but stable, their neural implants reconfigured to work with their bodies instead of destroying them. Axtal and their first converted ally guarded both ends of the hallway. More incoming, Axtal announced, their enhanced senses picking up movement through the station's walls. These ones feel different. Sarah's scanner confirmed their suspicion. Multiple high-level energy signatures. They've sent in their elite units. She checked the readings more carefully and felt her stomach drop. No, they've sent in their prototypes. The converted assassin, who had chosen the name Vex, shifted uneasily. Prototypes, you mean? The next generation of the enhancement program, Arkstel finished grimly. What we were meant to become. The station's lights flickered as something massive moved through the adjacent corridor. Sarah's scanner went haywire, detecting neural signatures that shouldn't have been possible. Their implants are completely integrated with their nervous systems. There's almost nothing organic left to save. A voice boomed through the station's walls, speaking in distorted Khazari battle language. Traitors and thieves. You steal our weapons and corrupt them with weakness. Surrender the human for execution, and your deaths will be quick. Sarah continued preparing her needles, using trembling fingers to lay them out in precise patterns. How many? 3. Arkstal answered. But in those bodies, it might as well be an army. Good thing we're not fighting them then. Sarah checked her supplies one last time. We're going to heal them. Vex stared at her. Healer, these are not patients. They are walking weapons. The prototypes have no consciousness left to save. Everyone has something left to save. Sarah's voice carried the conviction that had kept her going through the impossible nights of her medical training. The more they try to bury it, the deeper we'll dig to find it. The wall exploded inward as the first prototype breached the corridor. It was a nightmare of chrome and pulsing cybernetics, barely recognizable as Khazari. Its movements were perfectly efficient, utterly lethal, and completely inhuman. Arkstal met the charge, using their newly harmonized abilities to redirect rather than oppose. The prototype's attack missed by millimeters, leaving a hole in the deck plating that went down 3 levels. The implants are rejecting their organic tissue, Sarah called out, reading the scanner's analysis. They're dying by inches. That's why they're so aggressive. They're in constant pain. The prototype's head snapped toward her voice. Pain is weakness, it said in a voice like grinding metal. Weakness must be purged. Pain is information, Sarah countered, dropping into a medical crouch as Arkstal grappled with the creature. Pain tells us something is wrong, and I can help fix what they did to you. The second and third prototypes burst through different sections of wall, turning the corridor into a chaos of enhanced combat. Vex engaged one while Arkstal somehow held off both the first prototype and the third. Sarah watched the fight through her scanner, noting how the prototype's movements became more erratic as their implants continued to reject their organic components. There was a pattern to it, a rhythm she recognized from her earlier treatments. Arkstal, she shouted, remember how your implants fought against healing. They're doing the same thing. The override protocols are killing them to prevent them from being saved. Arkstal ducked a strike that would have removed their head. How do we help them? Sarah pulled out her needles. Get me 30 seconds with each of them. I'll show you what happens when healing becomes a weapon against death. The prototypes converged on her position, drawn by some programming that recognized her as the greatest threat to their mission. Sarah stood her ground, needles ready. Come on then, she whispered. Let me show you what true strength feels like. Sarah's world narrowed to heartbeats and neural pathways as she worked. The first prototype lay partly restrained on the deck, its enhanced body fighting her treatment with mechanical fury. Behind her, Arkstal and Vex battled to keep the other 2 prototypes at bay, buying her precious seconds with every movement. Neural rejection at critical levels, her scanner warned. Subject terminal in 45 seconds. Not today. Sarah's fingers flew, placing needles in a complex pattern she'd developed through the night's desperate treatments. Each prototype was different, their implants more invasive, more complete in their domination of organic tissue. But underneath all that technology, life still pulsed. The prototype's voice emerged as broken static. Cut. Strings. Puppet. You're not a puppet. Sarah placed another needle, channeling destructive energy away from vital systems. You're a person. You always were. They just made you forget. A massive impact shook the corridor as the second prototype threw Extal through a wall. The warrior emerged quickly, moving with the liquid grace of their properly integrated implants. Sarah, more ships approaching. Military command vessels. Then we better work fast. Sarah completed the pattern on the first prototype, watching as their neural readings began to stabilize. Welcome back to yourself, warrior. The prototype's cybernetic eyes flickered, then focused. Their voice, when it came, held something broken but unmistakably alive. I remember. My name. I had a name. Tell me, Sarah said softly, even as she prepared to move to the next patient. Kyrix, the prototype, person, struggled with the word. I was Kyrix. A barrage of weapons fire forced Sarah to roll behind cover, needles clutched carefully in her hands. The other two prototypes had redoubled their assault, as if sensing their programming was at risk. Their movements were becoming more erratic, more desperate. Their implants are accelerating the rejection. Sarah called out. We have minutes at most. Vex took a glancing blow that would have crushed a normal warrior, using the impact to spin into a defensive stance. They will not allow capture. The programming is too deep. But Kyrix was rising, their massive cybernetic frame shuddering as organic and mechanical components found a new balance. Brothers, their translator crackled. Brothers, stop fighting. Let her bring you back. The prototypes hesitated, their programming warring with something deeper, older, more fundamental than any enhancement. Sarah didn't waste the opening. She burst from cover, needles ready, scanner marking the crucial points she'd need to save them. The next moments were a blur of precision and desperation. Sarah worked on both remaining prototypes simultaneously, her hands moving with impossible speed as she raced against their failing systems. Extal and Vex held them as still as possible, while Kyrix spoke to them continuously in their native language, reaching past programming to the people buried beneath. Neural pathway established. Her scanner reported as she placed the final needles. Organic integration beginning. The prototype's enhancement lights flickered, dimmed, then stabilized into the same harmonious patterns she created in Extal. Their rigid frames relaxed as consciousness returned, not the artificial consciousness of their programming, but their true selves. How many? Extal asked quietly. How many more of our people are trapped like this? Thousands, one of the newly awakened warriors whispered, waiting in stasis. The next wave of the program. All of them. Lost. Sarah checked her supplies. She had enough needles for maybe 20 more treatments. Then we better figure out how to save them all. The station's AI cut through the moment. Multiple Khazari command ships entering weapons range, reading energy signatures consistent with planetary-grade weaponry. But Sarah was no longer afraid. She looked at her patients, her allies, and saw in their faces the same determination that had driven her through the impossible night. They were no longer weapons or warriors or prototypes. They were healers now, in their own way, and they had work to do. Well, she said, preparing fresh needles, shall we show them what happens when weapons choose to protect instead of destroy?